Poland Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
May not be meaningful to you when you're freezing your tuchus off at this time of year, but I just want to salute the Carrier Foundation, because it was on this day 119 years ago that Willis Carrier obtained the patent for the air conditioner. And nobody's thinking about that today, but oh boy, will you be thinking about that in August. So just want to shout out to him for that. Also, this is the start of another year for me, another year for you too, but it's significant for me, and then it's year 48 in radio. 48 years ago today, I started my first paying job at KPAC Radio in Port Arthur, Texas. And if all goes well, I'll be starting a 50th year 2 years from now and wrapping things up at the end of that year. But, these days, especially, and in AM radio especially, if you make a 3-year projection, it's probably a little bit on the optimistic side. Not that we shouldn't be optimistic. What the hell? The Wizards won last night, and they won in a blowout. So all New Year's bring some optimism with them. And for me, there is optimism as I begin another milestone in a long, long journey. So, yes, we had the real world intersecting with the sports world. Yesterday, we all woke up to the news of what happened in New Orleans, the horrible tragedy there, the terrorist activity, which resulted in the deaths of 15 people, and it also resulted in the postponement of the Sugar Bowl between Notre Dame and Georgia. So that's going to be now a 4 o'clock kickoff this afternoon, and we will have the radio coverage here at 3:30. We were due to have that last night, but the game was postponed. As things settle down a little bit, at night, Scott Van Pelt, doing his show, talked to Notre Dame coach Marcus Freeman about where things stand as they had to sit and wait and were in lockdown yesterday. They weren't even allowed to leave the hotel. Where things stand as they get ready to play Georgia this afternoon.
We're hurting for all those affected by this tragedy. The city of New Orleans has welcomed us with open arms, and we join them in prayers for all those victims and families that are affected by this tragedy. We got together this morning as a team, and, before I got downstairs, I had gotten a phone call that there was an incident, obviously some type of tragedy that happened in the middle of the night. And I didn't really have the details. And so we were preparing this morning to play a game this evening. And right. Then after our break, when we got the news and we learned of the severity of the tragedies that happened, we had to get back together as a team. I think a lot of people would start to hear that the game would be postponed, but we had to get back together and discuss what had happened. And so, what I told the team is in the toughest moments, the culture of any program of a nation is revealed. And I have a lot of faith this country will rally around New Orleans and support all the victims and families that were affected today.
Every coach I know, Marcus, they try their best to control the controllables. And there are certain things beyond your control. And clearly something such as this would fall under the scope of that. And again, with the understanding of the relative importance of a game, it is a game you will play. And when things change in this manner, I don't have the slightest idea what you all do. So I'm asking, how do you all digest what this means in terms of how you prepare for the game, which is now an afternoon game tomorrow as opposed to a night game tonight?
Yeah, as I said earlier, Scott, I think the first part of that team meeting was to mourn and to pray for our country and those that are affected. But as we ended that meeting, we had to redirect our focus towards preparing for this game. And we had to utilize this time that we have today and tomorrow morning to continue to prepare for this opportunity. And what I told him is I don't want to wait. We're not going to just wait until we get to play this game tomorrow, but we have to have a plan. And we came up with a great plan to utilize this time we have this evening to physically and mentally prepare. And then we came up with a plan for tomorrow morning as we get ready for a 3 o'clock Central Time Sugar Bowl. And so that was the reality of that meeting and what we had to do and where our focus has to be as a program. We will mourn and pray for our country, and we have support systems around here for anybody that needs someone to talk to or have support. But we also have to be prepared for this great opportunity that we have tomorrow in the Sugar Bowl.
You've mentioned our country quite a bit, and I'm with you. And I think that moments such as these are reminders of the things that matter. And I know Coach Smart well, and Kirby's a guy I know. I'm curious if you've had a chance to visit it all with him, because I would imagine that, yeah, you guys have 60 minutes tomorrow afternoon and you'll get after it. But I would imagine Dog fans and Irish fans are united as well as you and the city of New Orleans just try to process this. Has that been what happened?
Yeah, me and Kirby have not spoken directly since our press conference, but our athletic directors have been talking, and we've been in communication. And so in the brief time I've spent with Kirby Smart, you know, I have a lot of respect for him, and I know that he understands how important this country is and you know, how minute the game of football is compared to real lives and to our nation. And so we all will have that at the forefront of our minds as we move forward. But we also have to understand there's a game to play, and there's an opportunity that both programs have to play in the college football quarterfinals. And we have to make sure we're ready for that opportunity that is going to come here in the next couple hours.
Yeah, let's say 4 o'clock kickoff this afternoon, as the winner will go on to play Penn State. Penn State winning over Boise State on Friday night. So, you know, let's all keep our fingers crossed. I'm sure there will be heightened security for this. I remember the Super Bowl in 2002, which was after 9/11. It was actually delayed for a week, so they played it in February instead of at the end of January. And waking up that morning to go to the game, I was working for ESPN and doing reporting that day. We were told to come early, and when I got there, there was a ring of tanks around the Superdome. And, you know, of course, nobody knew what was going to happen. This was the first big event that the nation was holding after the 9/11 tragedy. And there was, you know, real fear that if terrorists were going to strike again, that would be the place to do it with 150 million people watching on television. Fortunately, nothing happened. But I just remember the security of that. And in those days, they didn't have tickets on your phone, so you had to have like a paper ticket. And if you didn't have one, you weren't getting into that ring with the tanks. And if you didn't have a credential like I did, you weren't getting through. And also, for the first time that I could remember, I was patted down from head to toe before I went into the Superdome. It was a whole new reality, and I'm sure many of those things are going to be in place for today. I've got some breaking news here, but before I do that, let's play what Jayden Daniels said yesterday when asked about the possibility he would land on the Pro Bowl roster.
It'll be a blessing. You know, it's not really something that like I really like looked too into, like, oh, I want to be a Pro Bowler or stuff like that. But you know, if I'm announced one, it'll be a blessing. If not, try again next year.
How much do you follow that stuff, just like the fan voting and all that stuff?
I don't follow it at all. I don't really understand. I mean, I appreciate the fans voting for me and stuff like that. So it's much love for our fan base and everybody voted for me. But other than that, I just try to go out there and control what I can control.
Guess what? Jayden Daniels, in his first year, is a Pro Bowler. He got the most votes among NFC quarterbacks, with Sam Darnold finishing second and Jared Goff. Oh, excuse me, I'm reading that wrong. Jared Goff got the most votes. So it was Goff of Detroit, with the team with the best record in the NFC. He's the number one Pro Bowl quarterback with Jayden Daniels and Sam Darnold. And if you'd have gone into this year and you'd said a retread quarterback in Sam Darnold would be a Pro Bowler, and as much optimism as there was for Jayden Daniels developing eventually, but to be a Pro Bowler in your rookie year and have it well-deserved, absolutely. In fact, this is what winning does. But in the entire Pro Bowl voting, Washington had 14 different players ranked among the top 10, and that just shows you that there's a big difference between winning 4 games last year and so far 11 with 1 to go. The only other player who made the Pro Bowl roster, and I'm kind of surprised about this, as well as there have been some pretty decent performances from the defense as well. is Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is one of the wide receivers, along with, of course, Justin Jefferson of Minnesota, C.D. Lamb of Dallas, and also Amon-Ra St. Brown of Detroit. So Detroit had the top quarterback and the top wide receiver. The running back, Saquon Barkley, obviously with 2,000 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs of Detroit. And Josh Jacobs of Green Bay also made it. One fullback, Kyle Juszczyk of San Francisco. Almost nobody uses a fullback anymore. That's a cool position to make it. As far as special teams, Jeremy Reeves has made it in the past. He did not make it. Also, Tress Way has been a Pro Bowl punter, all-pro punter. Jack Fox of Detroit did it. I guess that also shows a few times he had a punt this year. So that was helpful. And the linebackers, Zach Braun of Philadelphia, Fred Warner of San Francisco, Jonathan Grenard, from Minnesota, Andrew Van Ginkel of Minnesota, and Jared Verse of the Los Angeles Rams. So you got two Pro Bowlers on this year's roster. Terry McLaurin, always deserved, and Jayden Daniels in his rookie year is a Pro Bowl quarterback. How about that? Let's get back to the college. And, we had six of these playoff games heading into yesterday. And, you really needed something to happen to make this into an attractive event. I mean, I was one who said, oh, man, jumping from 4 to 12, that really is overexposure on that. And I was not happy to see that. And we've had blowout after blowout after blowout. And it looked like Texas and Arizona State were headed for yet another blowout. And that's not what we got. But we had all the makings of that, even in the pregame. Sam Leavitt is the quarterback for Arizona State. And as they say, don't write checks with your mouth that you can't cash. And it sounded going into this game that he did.
People keep counting me out since day one, and I'm gonna go prove I'm the better quarterback. And that's how I feel since day one. So I'm gonna go put everybody on the map.
Yeah, go prove you're better than Quinn Ewers, who everybody's known for years, and has kept Arch Manning on the bench, one of the most hyped recruits in history. You're going to be better than him, sure. Nick Saban on the pregame show on ESPN, game day, took the young man to task.
I never allowed our guys to talk smack about the other team or about the game because I think there's two negatives. First of all, which they've done in this game, is you motivate the other team because they feel like you're disrespecting them. And the second thing is you're either insecure and don't really believe in yourself, and I call that whistling by the graveyard. You're walking by the graveyard scared to death, but you're whistling like nothing's wrong.
Is that a West Virginia?
But neither one of those things are
I've heard
good.
that one before. Yeah.
Neither one of those things are good.
That's bad. You don't want to whistle by the graveyard.
Yeah, because then you're trying to tell yourself that you're okay.
Yeah, well, guess what? In a game that was 24-8, Texas in the fourth quarter, Sam Leavitt was cashing those checks, and he did it with the help of one of the most amazing performances that you will ever see on any football field. Cam Scatabo, who's built like a fire plug. There used to be a player for the Baltimore Colts named Don Nottingham. Don Nottingham looks like Cam Scatabo. And Scatabo has deceptive speed and incredible skills and a heart like you will never see. And he put the team on his back, down 24-8. And for the game, and most of this happened in the fourth quarter, Cam Scatabo, 269 total yards, 141 rushing, 86 receiving, 42 passing. And by the way, that was a touchdown pass. He also had 2 rushing touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. And they lost the game 39-31. This is, and I'll get to comparisons on this. This is one of the most remarkable performances that you'll see, winning or losing in a football game, and certainly losing for the first time in the 26-year history of the MVP of the Peach Bowl. They gave the award to Cam Scatabo, and he well deserved it. You almost never see that now, especially how quickly they're able to tabulate the votes. Chuck Howley is, I think, the only losing player of a Super Bowl to be named MVP, and that was that really sloppy game between the Colts and the Cowboys in Super Bowl V, where Jim O'Brien kicked the game-winning field goal. But that's because the ballots had to be in so early. In this particular case, he deserved it. He deserved that, and obviously left everything on the field. I think earned himself a lot of money in the NFL. His skills may not measure up to wherever he's drafted, but his heart will. And this was Levitt and Scadaboo after they went down in overtime to Texas, 39-31, double overtime, 39-31.
This group of guys is so special, especially the two sitting next to me. The amount of time that, just the amount of time that I spent with them, and just the work that we put in. It's just gonna hurt me not to be with him next year. Obviously I got another year, but I'm just going to go into this next season and, not take anything for granted, off-season workouts, the late nights in the facility and everything like that.
Coach Dillingham's got the longest future in coach history, I promise. And then, this kid next to me, he's going to play on Sundays. I'm going to play on Sundays. So us three right here, we got a long life ahead of us. This is just the beginning for us. No matter what, these guys will be in my life forever. So it's awesome that I was able to play football for and with them. ASU's changed my life forever, in a good way. Simple. They've supported me through everything, put me in a position to be successful. So I thank everybody in the ASU community and Coach Dillingham and his staff and his kid next to me right here. They changed my life forever.
Yeah, a lot of emotion there. Sam Levitt, quarterback for ASU, and Cam Scadabo, who again put on one of the most spectacular performances you will see, winning or losing. And as this game hung in the balance, I tweeted this out yesterday. If they win, if ASU wins, Scadabo is Kellen Winslow. If they lose, he's Ed Podolak. Let's start with had they won. And I think you've probably seen highlights of this over the years. If you're too young to remember watching the game, which took place in 1982, it was one of the most thrilling playoff games ever played and one of the greatest individual performances ever, as the Chargers outlasted Miami in overtime 41-38 at Miami. High humidity, high heat. Winslow had 13 catches for 166 yards and a touchdown and blocked a potential game-winning field goal at the end of the game. He had 13 receptions, which set the record. His yardage total also set a playoff record for tight ends. And like Scadaboo, who puked on the sidelines, he said he drank too much water. But he also hadn't been playing in fourth quarters of games because they were blowing everybody out. So he puked up on the sidelines, came back in. Winslow left a couple of times for dehydration and severe cramps, also treated for a pinched nerve in his shoulder and received 3 stitches in his lower lip. And you've probably seen the photo of him being essentially carried off the field by teammates. He's got an arm over each shoulder, and they had to drag him off the field as he left everything on the field. The other game, which goes back to 1971, Christmas Day of 71, Ed Podolak playing for the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs, also a game in Miami. The Dolphins eventually won the game in double overtime with Jan Stenerud missing 2 field goals. Stenerud was the first pure kicker to make it to the Hall of Fame, but he had a bad day that day, and Garo Yepremian finally in the second overtime, and I think it remains the longest playoff game ever played. They played a full overtime and then another one, so another, 19 minutes or something like that. And Stenerud missing those 2 field goals proved to be key as Yepremian kicked the Dolphins to the Super Bowl, where they got clobbered by the Cowboys, but then went on to win the next 2. Podolak in that game, 350 yards, 85 yards rushing, 110 receiving. He was also returning kicks, 155 yards on returns. He scored 2 touchdowns. The 2 that he got, one was a reception of 7 yards, and the other was a 3-yard run to put Kansas City up 24-17 in the fourth quarter, but they wound up losing the game 27-24. And the other comp I would make to Scadaboo, especially with the puking on the sideline, was what happened on New Year's Day, 1979. Joe Montana, already a household name. Nobody knew the name of Cam Scadaboo 2 weeks ago, but Montana was known. Montana had established himself as a great quarterback in one of the most visible schools maybe the visible school in the country, especially at that time when relatively few games were on television. And in the Cotton Bowl against Houston, Notre Dame was down 20-12 at the half, and it didn't look like Montana was going to be able to come out and play. It was brutally cold that day, unusual for Dallas, and the wind was whipping. And he had hypothermia. And the question was, would he play the second half? Somebody came up with the idea to give him chicken soup, which is Yiddish penicillin for a lot of us, and that warmed up his body enough to get back on the field. Still, they were down 34-12 in the fourth quarter. Going into the fourth quarter, down 34-12. Montana, as he would many times as a pro, rallied the Irish with 23 points, throwing a touchdown pass to Chris Haynes on the final play of the game, and Notre Dame won 35-34. So I would put Cam Skattebo in the category of those three men, and if you want to make it just college, he's in the Montana class there. That was unbelievable. The only difference is Montana won the game. And I think maybe the more appropriate comp is Ed Podolak, who left it all on the field for the Chiefs that day, but the Dolphins wound up winning in double overtime. Just amazing. I'll get to more on the Commanders, what Dan Quinn says Marcus Mariota did for Jayden Daniels in that win, and the great tribute that he gave him yesterday. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So guess who made the Pro Bowl? Jayden Daniels in his rookie year. The only rookie on the NFC roster at quarterback. The other two, and this is telling you about the times because both of them are really cast-offs. Sam Darnold, who is playing for his fourth team. Yeah, I think it's his fourth team. And was really an afterthought for Minnesota. They took J.J. McCarthy, and the feeling was that J.J. McCarthy would eventually become their starting quarterback, but he got hurt in the preseason. And Sam Darnold has had a spectacular year, and deservedly so made the Pro Bowl. And Jared Goff, who was traded by the Rams to the Detroit Lions, basically to run out his contract. I mean, they were unloading him, and Detroit really was going to be looking for their next quarterback, and they said, no, the quarterback's here. And he was the leading vote getter at quarterback for the NFC, so he's made it, and Jayden Daniels will be the third, and Terry McLaurin is the only other player from Washington who did make the Pro Bowl, which is a little bit of a surprise because they had 14 different players that were ranked among the top 10 in the voting at their positions. I don't know where Bobby Wagner finished, but if Wagner had made it this year, that would be 10 Pro Bowls. I mean, that guy, a remarkable career, and has been a great mentor, as Daniels has pointed out a number of times. And they have sort of this older brother, younger brother relationship. And as Daniels has said many times, it's been Wagner who showed him what it takes to do what you have to do. And he has done everything that he's been asked and more, and has already established himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the league, as evidenced by the fact that he makes the Pro Bowl in his rookie year. Let's get back to what happened against Atlanta on Sunday night, because I want to play something that NFL Films put together, and they do just spectacular work. But this Marcus Mariota relationship, kind of interesting. Like, I was thinking at the beginning of the year, well, if you're going to draft Jayden Daniels and you already have Sam Howell here, and he's still on a rookie contract, really cheap because, he was a fifth-round pick, why not just bring Howell back? But they knew what they were doing, and they understood this group with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, what older mentorship means. And they bring in Marcus Mariota at not a cheap price. He's making like $10 million a year, which is a pretty high cost for a backup quarterback. But he's already won a game for him this year when Daniels got hurt against Carolina. And more importantly, what he's done for Daniels behind the scenes. And asked about Mariota yesterday, Dan Quinn said this.
He had a remarkable week, and we talked about it in the team meeting today. So on our first day of the week, Tuesday, he was sick, like some of the guys have been, sent him home. And then Christmas came, had a son flying back. And in that time of the preparation to come back to get ready, and what you didn't see was him on the sideline talking to Jayden about some of the blitzes that were happening in the first half. This is what they're doing. This is where we want to go and what to do. And so when somebody can give you that kind of support and love, it's really remarkable. And so great teammates do make great teams. And Marcus, just that week alone, demonstrated like how much he's in, because it would have been very easy. That was a hard week, and I just had to get myself ready. But that's not who he is. And so to see him go through that whole week and then in the game give that type of support, like that was the clearest illustration of brotherhood I saw in the entire game. His love for him on the sideline saying like, hey man, this is going to happen. And at the end of the game, it was like big brother talking a little bit, stand up, like go win the game, you know, and like this is what's going to happen. And so what wouldn't we all give to have that kind of support from people? Like it's remarkable. And so I know that Jayden feels it. We all do. And I probably could have picked out some other people that had that same one, but Marcus, at that position, it is different. And there's certain things that he can say from the lens of the helmet that I can't or the coach can't, but he can because he lived it and seen it. It's such a cool relationship to see, the trust, the commitment to one another. And I'm really pumped that he's on our team because he adds a lot, Candy, to what we do. It may not show up on the stat sheet in that game, but let me tell you, he had a big hand in us winning that game.
So that's the Quinn version of Marcus Mariota's week last week. This is Mariota himself on how it played out.
It was a crazy, really like 48 hours. Wasn't feeling great, and just kind of with the bug going around, they asked me to just stay home and make sure that we try to contain it a little bit. So then Christmas Day rolls around, and about 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern, I get a call from my wife that she's having contractions. So I jumped on the next flight and, got there. Little man was born on Christmas. Coach Q and the staff were awesome. Told me to take a couple days, spend some time with them, make sure everything was settled. Flew back Saturday and then got the walk through, and then Sunday. And yeah, it was just a crazy, crazy week, but one that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Oh, for sure. And great stories to tell the kid. Also, Mariota said this, and I think this should not get blown by because I think it's significant. When talking about Jayden Daniels and preparing him for the game and also helping to get him through the game from what he observes from the sideline, they are game planning for him. You know, it in the beginning of the year, you go, well, okay, rookie quarterback, he's not used to seeing sophisticated defenses. We'll just run our base thing and we'll be fine. Well, listen to what Mariota says here about what teams are now doing with Jayden Daniels, now a Pro Bowl quarterback who spends an inordinate amount of time preparing for games, as you heard Dan Quinn say there, and they are showing him things that he's not seeing on film.
Week in and week out, we don't really get maybe what is on tape. I think we get a lot of unscouted looks just because of how well he's been playing, how well the offense has been playing. So, I think for him to kind of understand second, third, fourth drive in, okay, this is kind of what the game plan is for me, and this is how we can attack it.
Yeah, I mean, think of those valuable set of eyes. Guy's been around the league for 10 years. He's seen various defenses along the way. This is a guy playing on Sunday night his 16th game in the NFL, really his 15th because he only took a handful of snaps against Carolina before he got hurt. And to have that set of eyes to say, okay, we didn't see this on tape, but here's what they're doing. Here's how we can help you with this. That's invaluable. Now, NFL Films does this every week. They pick a particular game, and they had mic'd up Jayden Daniels for this, so they knew they were going to use this game for what they call the turning point. And the turning point, they show you, where the game changed. And obviously the turning point was in overtime before he threw the touchdown pass to Zach Ertz. But in this, having mic'd him up, you're going to hear what Mariota said to him. There was they took a timeout before that play because Daniels had gotten hit and he was out of breath. And remember, he was down, squatting down, and Mariota came over to him and said something to him. Well, these are the mics picking that up, and here's the NFL Films treatment of what happened on that final play with the Bram Weinstein call, with Mariota's audio being picked up by Jayden Daniels, what Daniels said about it and what Zach Ertz said about it. They call this the turning point, and this was clearly the turning point in the overtime win Sunday.
Daniels was battered but upright and able to orchestrate the game's turning point.
Hey, use your God-given ability. Go win us the game.
Third and goal at the 2. Two tight ends to the left. Here's the snap. Jayden's going to throw forward. He does. Into the end zone. Zach Ertz, who wants to go to the playoffs? Touchdown, Washington! They win in overtime! Washington wins 30-24. They have now qualified for the postseason for the first time since 2020.
You know, we repped that so many times. I knew he was going to win on it. He was going to make the catch, and it was going to be game over. Man coverage. I knew they were going to keep eyes on Terry, and I knew Zach had a one-on-one.
It's a timing throw, so it's really just a trust throw. I run that route a ton of times with Jayden. Jayden threw the ball about 1,000 miles an hour. He was saying I was going to catch it or no one was going to catch it, and thankfully I did. He exudes such a quiet confidence. He's not out there a rah-rah guy. He's the most mature rookie I've ever been around.
Yeah, I mean, it's really remarkable to watch him week after week. And Daniels has been saying this all year long. I don't know how many people have been paying attention to it, but where you hear Marcus Mariota say, use your God-given ability and go win the game, that's not something you often hear from backup quarterbacks. Matter of fact, I mean, this goes back a long time. But Jim Hart, who had a great long career with the St. Louis Cardinals, played his last year in the NFL in 1984 here in Washington as Joe Theismann's backup. He had worked with Joe Gibbs before when Gibbs was an assistant in St. Louis, and they met up at the Super Bowl, and, you know, Gibbs said, would you like to play another year? And he said, yeah, I think so. And so he came here as the backup and really didn't play because Theismann stayed healthy that whole year. But I remember talking to him about Neil Lomax, who the Cardinals had drafted, I think the last 2 years he played in St. Louis. And they didn't have a salary cap in those days, so you could keep a veteran around at that time. And, you know, what were they making? A couple $100,000, $300,000 a year, whatever it was. So I said, well, what about, you know, your mentorship to Neil Lomax? And he laughed. He didn't want it. He didn't want it. Well, don't you think Neil Lomax, who played at Portland State, could have benefited from somebody like Jim Hart, who at that point had played 15, 16 years in the NFL? Didn't want it. This is a relationship which is completely different. And this was Daniels on that relationship yesterday.
I mean, everybody's just seeing it now, but he's been doing that ever since I got here. Even before I even got here. You know, he's always been a guy that when I first met him, very genuine, very nice, and just was like, if you need anything, just let me know. So everybody's just seeing it now, but Mark has been like that since day one.
Yeah, even in training camp, he was talking about how important he was to his development, which, remember, guys, the second pick of the draft, the Heisman Trophy winner, you know, I mean, he's competing for the job. Is he going to say those things? But that has been an incredible relationship, and I don't think should be underestimated. I played this a little bit ago. This was, again, yesterday with 14 players ranked among the top 10 for Washington in Pro Bowl voting. Daniels was asked, well, what about it? What if you make the Pro Bowl this year?
It'll be a blessing. You know, it's not really something that, like, I really, like, looked into, like, oh, I want to be a Pro Bowl or stuff like that. But, you know, if I'm announced one, it'll be a blessing. If not, try again next year.
How much do you follow that stuff, just like the fan voting and all that stuff?
I don't follow it at all. I don't really understand. I mean, I appreciate the fans voting for me and stuff like that. So it's much love for our fan base and everybody voted for me. But other than that, I just try to go out there and control what I can control.
Well, he is a Pro Bowler this year and may make the Pro Bowl a whole bunch of other times during his career. But he is there with Jared Goff, the top vote getter from the Detroit Lions, and incredibly Sam Darnold, who was left on the side of the road and has had a spectacular year for the Minnesota Vikings. They also have alternates, and alternates are kind of odd this time because we haven't had a game in a few years. I mean, it used to be all these guys would opt out of the game for various reasons, and you had to have players to actually get on the field and play. Well, since they don't have a game anymore, I don't know how important this is, but it's an honor. And remember last year, they didn't have a single Pro Bowl player. They got 2 of them this year in Daniels and McLaurin, and on top of that, they're still naming alternates, which, okay, it's a ceremonial award, but remember, they had none last year. 0. And listen to all the alternates that they have. Bobby Wagner, first alternate. Tyler Ott, the long snapper, first alternate. Nick Bellore, special teams, first alternate. Center, Tyler Biotish, second alternate. Frankie Louvu, who I think has had a Pro Bowl year, but okay, he's the second alternate. Tress Way, who's made the Pro Bowl before, has been an All-Pro. He's the second alternate. Austin Eckler, who's missed a lot of time. He's just coming back off his second concussion, but he was named a third alternate as a kick returner, not as a running back, but as a kick returner. Dante Fowler, outside linebacker, third alternate. He's had a great year rushing the passer. Jeremy Reeves, who's been an All-Pro at special teams, he's a third alternate. He's coming back off the knee injury, and maybe who knows how this stuff is graded. Some of it's fan voting too, so who really knows? But Jeremy Chin, a fifth alternate, and Zach Ertz, who's also a fifth alternate. Not for this team. Zach Ertz is a Pro Bowl player for them. I mean, he's had a year that really nobody could have expected. So think about that. 0 players in the Pro Bowl last year. They've got 2 of them in Daniels and McLaurin, plus this long list of alternates, which, isn't what it was in terms of practicality because there's not going to be a game and these, guys won't be showing up in uniform. But the honors that came out of this, really amazing, really, and just addresses the unbelievable turnaround that this team has had in 1 year. All right, more reaction from Ashburn yesterday as Jayden Daniels, who was hit a bunch of times, says, don't worry about me. I didn't get hit hard. We'll see about that. Also, Dan Quinn on why it's important to get the 6th seed in the playoffs. That and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. 60 years ago today, when even highly drafted rookies were making 20, maybe 25, Joe Namath signed a contract with the New York Jets that paid an unbelievable sum of $427,000 over 3 years. And it set the sports world on its ear. We'll get to that later this hour. Terry McLaurin's going to the Pro Bowl along with his rookie quarterback, Jayden Daniels. Both of them named today to the Pro Bowl squad, along with a slew of other players who are alternates. Not that alternates mean a whole lot, but you know how many Pro Bowl players Washington had last year? Bupkis. 0. Now they have a chance to win 12 games on Sunday. They've already clinched a spot in the playoffs. They can move up to the number 6 spot with a win. And, wow, what a difference a year makes. As we opened up 2024, the feel was a whole lot different than it is now. As Washington was heading into the last game of the season with Ron Rivera, nobody knew who the coach was going to be. You're hoping maybe they're going to be able to draft Jayden Daniels. You don't necessarily know that. And even if you do, how many times have teams whiffed on quarterbacks at the top of the draft, including this team, with the quarterback who, by the way, wore the same number, Heath Schuler. He was number 3 in 1994, and he was a complete bust, one of the big busts of all time. So you just don't know. And then, Dan Quinn being named the coach, I don't think anybody jumped up and down and got all excited about that, but he's done a great job and is in the discussion for sure, Coach of the Year. And it just blows your mind when you think of how things have turned around in this short period of time and how bright the future looks with Jayden Daniels and with this organization, the way it's being run by Josh Harris as the chief of ownership, with Mitch Rales as number 2. And both of those guys have had enormous success in business, unlike a young Danny Snyder who made his money in what they called phone slamming and was heavily leveraged when he came here in 1999 as the owner. So as we open up the new year, it's just filled with optimism about this football team. Sadly, the college football story of yesterday was not the games that were played, though one of them had a spectacular ending with a spectacular performance with a guy who has a kind of a spectacular name, Cam Skattebo, who put on a performance for the ages in a loss for Arizona State. Just if you're not, familiar with the numbers, and most of these were in the second half. He had 269 total yards, 141 rushing on 30 carries, by the way. 30 carries for a running back who's puking up on the sideline and haven't come out after plays because he just doesn't have any energy. 86 yards receiving, 42 yards passing. That was on, by the way, a touchdown pass. He also had 2 rushing touchdowns and a 2-point conversion, but they lost the game 39-31. But the story of the day, sadly, was what happened in New Orleans. And they are going to play the game today between Notre Dame and Georgia. with the winner going to play in the Orange Bowl against Penn State, which won on Friday night. And it's just so jarring what happened there. I have been to multiple Super Bowls in New Orleans. I think 4 of them. Also was there for a Final Four in 1993, and it is what everybody does when they go to one of these events. This is what makes New Orleans such a great place to hold events in the Superdome, is because of Bourbon Street. It's a great place to party, and everybody gathers, and they stand around, they talk, and it's just a great scene for anybody who wants to participate in all the trimmings that go along with the Super Bowl or Final Four. It's not just the games; it's the other stuff that goes with it. And I remember seeing John Madden at the height of his fame walking up and down Bourbon Street with Leslie Visser, all part of the big party that went on. And tragically, this horrific event happens. It happens like 3 a.m, but there's still a big crowd because New Orleans never sleeps. And 15 people are dead, including a former football star at Princeton. It's just unbelievable, and you have to move on from these things. Understand that the teams are there. They're in lockdown. The fans are there. Could you postpone the game? Yeah, you could, and they did for one day. But, could you do it for a week? I suppose, but you're really then kind of messing up the whole schedule for the championship game, which is going to be played on Monday night, January the 20th. And could they make some other arrangements, as they did in 2001 when we had the season postponed for a week because of 9/11, and they played the Super Bowl actually in New Orleans that year in 2002, February of 2002. But as I mentioned in the last hour, there was a ring of tanks around the Superdome the morning of the game, and you weren't getting inside that ring, which was, I don't know, maybe a quarter of a mile from the stadium, unless you had a ticket or a credential. And I just, this was a new world that we were all in at post 9/11. It wasn't like this before. And it was really, really jarring for me and many others. And I wonder, what the security is going to be like for this game this afternoon. We're going to have it for you here, pregame at 3:30 and kickoff at 4 o'clock. The game that has really so far, I don't want to say saved, but at least has made these playoffs watchable, because aside from this game, we've had nothing but blowouts, including, shockingly, what Ohio State did to Oregon yesterday, winning by 20 points in a game that really wasn't even that close. I think at one point it was 31-0. And given that these two teams played the game of the year, with Ohio State, poor clock management, they had a chance to set up the game-winning field goal and couldn't do it. And then everybody left Ohio State on the side of the road when they lost to Michigan. Oh, that's it. They're not going to survive this. This is a mess, and they're going to have to change the coach. And oh my God, what a complete mess this is. And no, they're the way they're playing right now. You got to figure Ryan Day is going to be hoisting the national championship trophy instead of getting a pink slip. That was unbelievable. But the most exciting day was the one that Cam Scatterbo turned in for Arizona State. And, it was a crushing loss for them for sure. Losing in overtime as Texas intercepted a pass to end the game after they had gone ahead with a touchdown and a 2-point conversion in the second overtime. I hate the overtime rules. I really hate the overtime rules, but they are what they are, and Texas took advantage of them, and they won. Now, this will be discussed forever and ever in Tempe. And when people sit around talking about what could have happened on New Year's Day 2025, minutes of play in the fourth quarter, game is tied at 24, and Arizona State quarterback Sam Leavitt, who did a lot of yapping before the game, but then late in the game backed it up, threw short over the middle to wideout Melquan Stovall, and he was taken down by Michael Taff of Texas. To me, in the old rules of football, nobody bats an eye. That's the way you make a tackle, and it was helmet-to-helmet contact, which, according to the new rules, is targeting. That's illegal. He could have even been thrown out of the game. Certainly, it should have been a 15-yard penalty. No targeting was called, and Arizona State had to punt. Now, I guess fortunately for them, a field goal was missed at the end of regulation, which was essentially a chip shot for a veteran kicker, but didn't happen, so the game went to overtime, and that's what followed. But And looking back at this game, Scott Van Pelt on his show last night with Dusty Dvorak, who was in studio with him, an analyst for ESPN, former player, I think, at LSU and played in the NFL for a while. They discussed this play, and I agree 100% with their take.
This is my opinion. If that's a 1 o'clock window game between a couple of ACC or any conference or whatever, I don't care who it is, that's targeting 100 times out of 100. It wasn't in this case. What'd you see? What'd you think?
I thought it was targeting. Michael Taft's a fabulous player. His story is incredible. He's second-team All-American. But I thought it was targeting in the moment. I picked up the phone. I made a few phone calls. I talked to Bill Lamagna, who I think is one of the absolute best, works for us, ESPN, ABC, as a rules expert. And he said verbatim, it's a defenseless player. There was an upward thrust indicator, forcible contact to the head or neck area. It's targeting. And so we heard Matt Austin on the call. He thought it was targeting. We go through these seminars and before the season as analysts that call games, and we're always looking at different plays. Mm-hmm. That looked to me to be the letter of the law, targeting. But having said that, even if they call the targeting, it doesn't guarantee Arizona State wins that game.
They're 4 for 12 coming into this game kicking, and they had one blocked and missed another, correct?
And that's right. And Arizona State was in a position when we just showed.
Right, 4th and 13.
They're up by a touchdown. It's 4th and 13. They still had their opportunities to win that game. That doesn't absolve the fact that, to me, that should be called regardless of the situation. But is that the reason Texas won, Arizona State lost? Absolutely.
No, but it's just this is conversation that every fan out there is having in real time. And so to hear that the rules officials are saying, look, that's targeting, and help me understand something, because where this gets gray for me is, does intent, because I don't feel like there was intent there, but I don't know, does it matter in that situation if there's that kind of head-to-head contact?
It doesn't. And again, and also, he's a defenseless player. Right. So he's protected. So that's where it's, if there's forcible contact to the head or neck area, it's different, because a lot of people say we hit him with his face. Yes, he did. Right. Crown of the helmet is something different. That can be, applied whenever he's not a defenseless player. You can't ever use the crown of your helmet. So, and I'm a defensive guy, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm fighting for there not to be so many targeting. And I think that the punishment is far too punitive. But in that moment, on that play, I don't know many people. I was shocked. I don't know how you felt when they went to replay.
When they said it wasn't, I'm like, wow. I
was very surprised.
But I think more than one thing can be true simultaneously. Often is the case. It would have been a bummer for a game to end on a penalty, because that's just as a bummer for that to happen. But if it's a penalty, it's a penalty. And I think cosmically, the fact that in the end it does end up in overtime, and then both teams had opportunities to win it, all things being considered, that felt like the appropriate way for this game to end, not on a call or a non-call. And Arizona State had an opportunity. They just didn't get the stop on 4th down.
When the Auburn field goal doinked, it just kind of felt like the football gods somewhat made that right.
I guess, but ultimately Texas won in overtime, and it's more of the SEC stuff that's gone on this year. I know Texas is not a traditional SEC team, but clearly the networks are behind this, and the play here, you could really make a case that, ESPN has a deal with the SEC. Everybody knows it. All the games are on ESPN. Just maybe subconsciously the referees know what to do. I mean, it's really a tough call on that. But I really thought Kirk Herbstreit really made a fool of himself the other day when Michigan beat Alabama. And he put out a tweet and congratulated Michigan for winning that game. Never mind that he was the one carping about the fact that Indiana got in and Alabama with 3 losses did not. Indiana with only 1 loss, and that was at Ohio State. And, depending on how things play out here, there is a possibility. I don't know if it's likely, but there is a possibility that the 2 teams that Indiana lost to on the road will play for the national championship. Now, that would require Notre Dame beating Georgia today, and then beating Penn State, and then Ohio State beating Texas in what is not really a home game, but a home state game in the Cotton Bowl on Friday night. So, you gotta look at it in that particular way. Like, most people in the moment thought, so clearly that's targeting. That's gonna set Arizona up to kick the game-winning field goal here, and Texas is going to be upset. And we finally got what they've been hoping for in these playoffs is March Madness, where you always have a 16 has beaten a 1 twice, and you always have the 3-14 upsets and all that, 5-12. They happen all the time. And we would have had that, but that did not happen yesterday. Let me get to this on Jayden Daniels. Remember the first game of the year, he carried 16 times, and a lot of us said, this guy ain't going to last. He's stick figure thin, and they're going to break him in two. And here he is heading into game number 17 on Sunday in Dallas. He is at least healthy enough to play. Everybody's got bumps and bruises this time of year. He is a Pro Bowl quarterback. And if you watch the game on Sunday night against Atlanta, the reason that they won, sure, he threw the winning touchdown pass to Zach Ertz, but they were in position to do that because he carried the ball, and he carried the ball 16 times. And it was one of those things I thought, watching it in real time, was, well, this is really important because they're going to try and lock up a playoff spot. And this is the time of year where you sell out. And I thought, man, he's, if he stays upright in this game, good for him. But he's taking a big risk here. So in his news conference every Wednesday, quarterback talks, I think it was Chris Russell asked him this question about his health. And it's a legitimate question. Now, he's not going to tell you anything, but every question Jayden Daniels has answered this year, he doesn't really get, I would say, excited. He gives you a short answer. He gives you information from time to time, but he's certainly not loquacious, doesn't say a whole lot. But this was the first time I really heard him, kind of get defensive about being hit as much as he was.
I didn't take no hard hits. I just got hit, but it wasn't nothing crazy. But I feel good. I feel fine. It's football at the end of the day. If I don't run the ball, maybe if I run the ball 2 times, you're going to get hit at some point. Try to protect yourself, but I feel fine.
Okay. And I'll take him at his word. And he does look a lot better than he did during that 3-game losing streak. I think the rib thing, they downplayed it. Understandable. That's what you do in the NFL. But here it's cold weather, and it won't be cold in Dallas because they got the roof. But it was pretty cold actually it wasn't cold. It was actually warm on Sunday night. But they've had some cold games. You haven't seen him put that wrap around his ribs. So I think he's healthy now. He's probably healthier than he's been since the start of the Carolina game, even with the heroics that he had against the Bears where he threw the Hail Mary pass. So yeah, I think he's. Speaking of the Bears, by the way, this was interesting yesterday. They don't have a coach, obviously, or an offensive coordinator. They fired both of them. But Caleb Williams, getting ready for the season finale against Green Bay on Sunday, was asked about Kliff Kingsbury, who did work with him last year as an offensive analyst, they called it, at USC. And, his name is going to be out there. Now, the most common name you hear for that job is Ben Johnson, who's the offensive coordinator with Detroit, turned down the job here. Though I talked to my cousin yesterday, who's a 40-year season ticket holder with the Bears. He said they don't pay money. He said it's the McCaskey family. They don't spend the bucks, and he really wonders whether Ben Johnson will take that job. He'll be in demand, as will Kliff Kingsbury, for sure. But this is what Caleb Williams said yesterday about speculation about Kingsbury taking over as coach of the Bears next year. He said, I know what type of guy he is. I know he loves football. I know he wants to win. He's a competitor. And in so many different aspects that I was just speaking of, I've been around him. So I would say that being around him, knowing him, asking him questions and things like that, I think obviously if he was here, I'd probably have more to say, but I think he fits a bunch of those qualities that I said. And he was asked, well, what are those qualities? A coach that challenges myself, whether it's an offensive coordinator or head coach, and also challenges us as players, whether it's on the field or character, doesn't matter, just a coach that challenges us, a man of his word, a disciplined coach, meaning whatever rules are, whatever he's going to bring rule-wise, he's going to control the team and manage and control the team and things like that. Now, it's been reported that the Bears interviewed Kingsbury for the job last year, and they passed on him for Shane Waldron, who lasted 9 games. Now, I wonder about this. I guess it's an Eberflus call, Matt Eberflus, who was fired after the Thanksgiving debacle in Detroit, where he just totally mismanaged the clock. Was Kingsbury, in fact, offered the job but not enough money and knew that he would get money in other places? He was, by the way, all the way set to take the Raiders. Raiders was seemingly a done deal. And then at the last minute, we find out, oh, no, he's going to be coming here to Washington and have the opportunity. They hadn't drafted him yet, but have the opportunity to work with Jayden Daniels. It would have seemed to be a no-brainer that you would have him work with the quarterback who he worked with last year. I mean, that seemed to make sense. And I'm sure in the pre-draft interviews with Caleb Williams, they had to ask him, well, what do you think of Kingsbury? Because he's out on the market, and we're looking for an offensive coordinator. So I just wonder if he was offered the job and wasn't enough money and knew that he could get more in other places and could also get a great quarterback to work with as he did here. And how about this? Nobody's going to say anything about this, but you got to think this is a possibility. You may think, oh, come on. Is it possible that Kliff Kingsbury saw some things in Caleb Williams as a college quarterback which he thought might be red flags in the NFL? And maybe Kingsbury may have been offered the job. We don't know. Maybe Kingsbury thought to himself, I like the kid. He likes me, but I don't know if I can develop him into a great NFL quarterback. I don't know whether I can do that, and all the pressure is going to be on because he's going to be the number one pick. I think all that's in play. And now with Kingsbury at the end of the season being available for any team that wants to hire him as a head coach, he can't bring him in as an offensive coordinator, nor would he want to go anywhere for a lateral move. But is that in play too? It's going to be keeping an eye on the Bears. It's going to be fascinating to see who they wind up with as a head coach and at the same time offensive coordinator. That's a wrap for me. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at